finds things like that interesting. My wife calls me weird, so. Now, if you did happen to get off here, maybe you're in town tomorrow and want to come back, if you look on the right, you can see a little bit of imaging of the 4 cars that are left remaining from the Maritime Motorworks division. If you were to walk in the front, the windows would be of plain view. It's not mirror glass in the front. Has anyone had a sample or a taste of Tennessee white whiskey? Alright, there's a place, a part of stop number 9 that can supply you with that taste. If you look to the right hand side, you will notice Greenbrier Distillery. It's on the same walk, actually sidewalk side of the Maritime Village there. If you were to type in a smartphone, Greenbrier, it'll give you the pretty much an idea as to how that tour operates. And as a part of one of the samples you'll have will be of the Tennessee white whiskey. But Greenbrier was founded by Charles Nelson, and he was the oldest of his brothers and sisters, and he and the family were on their way to the United States by boat in the early 1800s. And a bad storm broke out while on their way, and they actually lost their father. He was overturned and weighed down by the family's gold. So that left the family penniless and fatherless. But that also left Charles Nelson actually with more responsibility. He had a family to take care of, being the oldest. So after moving to the States and on land, he ended up becoming a mercantile. One of the staples besides coffee he sold was whiskey. His whiskey began to buzz out, where in 1 year he sold and produced over 360,000 gallons of whiskey. Shortly after that, the demand for the whiskey started outpacing his suppliers, where he jumped in and started making it on his own. He once then moved to Greenbrier Distillery, Greenbrier, Tennessee, and built Greenbrier Distillery. And to expand, he moved one here in Nashville at that location in the early 1900s. Now this street that we're turning right on is Charlotte Avenue. And a little bit more history about Nashville. Charlotte Avenue was named after Charlotte Robertson. She was the wife of James Robertson. And James Robertson was one of the co-founders of Fort Nashville. The Robertsons are one of 40 families that moved here from Carolina by the way of East Tennessee. Those 40 families overlooked the Cumberland River, lived with Riverfront Park, downtown area, and they also built a 2-acre fort as well. That 2-acre fort in the 1700s brought them protection against, of course, the Native Americans that would try to attack. Well, in 1781, the men were on their way back in one day from a hunting trip with the spoils, and they had realized that the Chickamauga Indians had surrounded the fort that they had built. The women left in the fort with the children also realized that. So they formed the line shoulder to shoulder, which wouldn't have brought much defense against the Indians' attacks. But Charlotte came up with a plan. She unleashed the war dogs. The war dogs chased the Indians out, panicked the horses, and enabled the men to make it back inside the fort. Once they made it back inside, they acknowledged Charlotte as being a war hero, and they said, "Who let the dogs out?" So you actually can say that's 300 years old, and it came from Nashville. All was true except for the last part. Now on our left-hand side and going up about a mile is lined with hospitals and clinics. The locals of old here in Nashville called or nicknamed this Hospital Heaven. The city of Nashville today has over 51 operating hospitals and clinics inside its limits. The 210,000 that are employed in the healthcare industry here comprises as one of 2 thriving industries in Nashville. The largest employer for the state of Tennessee is Vanderbilt. So in that industry, 30,000. The industry that's right there with healthcare is the automobile industry. Nashville has 13 more times presence in that industry than in the whole state of Tennessee combined. They have a Nissan North America that's the second largest employer for the state of Tennessee. They employ right at 20,000, and they produce 6 automobiles from the plant. And then GM would be the 6th largest employer, producing 4 automobiles from the plant and employing about 12 to 14,000. On behalf of Minnie Pearl. She was a cancer survivor, and she became a spokesperson for Pearl Point. And through her diligent work, they named that Tennessee Oncology building and practice on behalf. Now, on the left-hand side lays our stop number 10 inside of Centennial Park. And they had a celebration. It was a 100-year anniversary for the state of Tennessee. At the time, President McKinley pushed a button from D.C. that set a relay off all the way to Nashville. That relay then fired the cannons and opened up the gates for the exhibition that was held here. 2 things are left remaining. One will be the lake in front of us, and the other would be the Parthenon. The Parthenon at the time was built temporarily out of plaster and wood. But lined along the lake was 80 to 100 buildings that had tobacco roofs on top, due to tobacco being one of Tennessee's main crops. On our right side, pretty much the length of the park on this side, it was lined with large aquariums. Now the Parthenon was heavily favored by locals and visitors, so the building sat for almost 40 years until they could realize what they wanted to do with it. It would have been very costly to have it hauled off in the early 1900s. If you look to the left, you'll see the size of this permanent Parthenon. The one that was built temporarily was the same size. So the city took careful consideration and started the blueprints and construction for the Parthenon. The blueprints actually took 10 years for them to produce the masters. And then they finally broke ground to build the permanent one in 1935. And I'll pause there. If you look to the right, these 2 pieces here, the one to the rear is a Yellow Jacket steam engine. It was donated by the St. Louis, Nashville, and Chattanooga Railway. And that fighter jet there is an FL-62 that was flown by the Air National Guard for 57 and 60. That steam engine is a part of a $5 million refurbishment project. And after it's done, it'll be moved downtown on the railway and put to use. Now, the Parthenon, as I stated, they broke ground in 1935 for construction. So you had 10 years of construction for the interior and 10 on the exterior. And in 1955, they finally opened it up as a museum. So after 30 years, they finally got it opened up. And this museum at the time, and still is the only replicating museum, of course replicating that one that was built in Athens. The one in Athens was used for 2 purposes. It was used for a religious hub and an educational hub. Now, the Nation of Islam is in control of the one that's been built in Athens. So preservationists has managed to work a deal with the Nation of Islam leaders and get some of the artifacts out of the partially destroyed inside of that Parthenon. We managed to get our hands on the original Elgin marbles, so they can be found on display inside. Now, the Parthenon operated almost 30 years, and they realized they were missing something. It didn't have the giant Athena inside as the one did inside of the original Parthenon.